Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In this video, we're going to be discussing Hogwarts Headmaster Albus Dumbledore and the Unforgivable Curses. Now, those three curses, Avada Kedavra, Imperius, and Cruciatus, are known as the Unforgivable Curses. The use of any one of them on a fellow human being is enough to earn a life sentence in Azkaban. That's what you're up against. That's what I've got to teach you to fight. You need preparing. You need arming. But most of all, you need to practice constant, never-ceasing vigilance. Get out your quills. Copy this down. That was, of course, Mad-Eye Moody, actually Barty Crouch Jr., explaining what the Unforgivable Curses are. The reason for these three curses being unforgivable is simple: legislation. They were first classified as unforgivable and illegal by the Ministry of Magic in the year 1717. At the same time, the strictest penalties were put in place and attached to their use. Before 1717, we can only assume that they were regarded just like any other spell, and while we don't have any information to support this, there must have been some sort of catalyst that made the ministry truly realize how dangerous these spells were. Ulick Gamp was the Minister for Magic at the time that the spells were outlawed, with just 1 year left in his term. The three spells were truly set apart from others, and they were very clearly categorized and outlawed. What's interesting, however, is that while these three spells are pretty awful, and the potential for destruction is high, there are other spells that exist in the wizarding world that technically have the same capacity to do damage. The Unforgivable Curses are three of the most powerful and sinister spells known to the wizarding world. They are tools of the dark arts, and generally only used by the darkest and most sadistic witches and wizards, unafraid of the consequences attached to their use. But something that I've always wondered was if Dumbledore had ever performed one of them. He lived for quite a long time, and experienced both the First and Second Wizarding Wars firsthand, so surely he had some exposure to them. We know that Albus Dumbledore has a little bit of a dubious past, having previously been close with Dark Wizard Gellert Grindelwald. Along with Grindelwald, he was fully on board with the plan that would establish a global wizarding hierarchy, placing wizards in power over muggles. That's right, the Dumbledore that we know and love wanted to rule over muggles. Fortunately, sooner rather than later, Dumbledore's direction in life changed for the better, as he parted ways with Grindelwald. After a disagreement involving Dumbledore's brother, Albus IV, the trio entered into a three-way duel, which resulted in the death of Albus's sister, Ariana. Gellert and Albus had only known each other for 2 months before parting ways. 2 months of insanity, as Dumbledore would later recall them to be. Nonetheless, during this time the pair shaped one another's ideas, powers, and destinies. Of course, Dumbledore had a bit of a troubled home life before any of that ensued, as his father had been sent to Azkaban for attacking 3 Muggle children after they attacked his daughter and Albus's sister, Ariana. But even after parting ways with Grindelwald, Dumbledore would have had many opportunities to perform unforgivable curses, particularly during the First Wizarding War, when Barty Crouch Sr., the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, authorized Aurors to use the Unforgivable Curses without risk of penalty. The Death Eaters were strong, and it was imperative that the good guys start resorting to dire measures to ensure that the reign of darkness over the magical world could be stopped effectively. His instructions were that the Death Eaters should be defeated by any means necessary. He adopted an attack first and question later strategy, prioritizing killing suspects over capturing them if appropriate. Dumbledore was the leader of the Order of the Phoenix during this time, an organization comprised of Aurors and other powerful witches and wizards who shared one common goal: defeat Voldemort and the Death Eaters. The original order was created in the 1970s and was constructed after Voldemort returned to England from abroad and started his campaign to take over the Ministry of Magic and persecute Muggleborns. The Order worked with the Ministry quite closely to defeat Voldemort and his forces, and so they were also allowed to administer necessary force, permitting the use of the Unforgivable Curses. The sheer power of Voldemort and his forces during the First Wizarding War meant that the good guys had to cast spells first and question their morality second. And given that Dumbledore was the leader of the Order of the Phoenix, I'm willing to bet that he used at least one Unforgivable Curse during the course of the war. But which of the three would Dumbledore have used? Surely some would be more fitting than others. The Imperius Curse, or Imperio, is most often used by dark witches and wizards, and when it is cast on a victim, they are forced to perform the unquestioned bidding of the caster. Being under the control of this spell is said to be like experiencing a wonderful release from any sense of responsibility, making the victim extremely susceptible to any sort of influence from the caster. This one really doesn't seem like Dumbledore's style, and I'm not sure what sort of advantage it would bring the good guys. Dumbledore is a huge proponent of free will, something which the use of the Imperious Curse would directly contradict. He believes that everyone's path is defined by their choices, and that everyone has the capacity to change the trajectory of their life if the will is there. Because of that, I think that the Imperious Curse is the least likely of the three curses for Dumbledore to have used. It just doesn't fit with his personality. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. The Cruciatus Curse, otherwise known as Crucio, is most often used by dark witches and wizards. When cast, Crucio inflicts excruciating pain on the victim, pain so excruciating that it is considered to be torturous. Though I don't think that Dumbledore used this spell later in life, I do think that he may have used it as a young man, maybe even if just to learn how to use it. Him and Grindelwald experimented with all sorts of dark magic, so I imagine that he would have been curious as to how Crucio works. In the Order of the Phoenix, there was actually an exchange between Voldemort and Dumbledore which seems to possibly allude to the use of Crucio. "You do not seek to kill me, Dumbledore?" called Voldemort, his scarlet eyes narrowed over the top of the shield. "Above such brutality, are you?" "We both know that there are other ways of destroying a man, Tom," Dumbledore said calmly, continuing to walk towards Voldemort as though he had not a fear in the world, as though nothing had happened to interrupt his stroll up the hall. "Merely taking your life would not satisfy me, I admit." "There is nothing worse than death, Dumbledore," snarled Voldemort. "You are quite wrong," said Dumbledore. However, Dumbledore may have just been referring to imprisonment as a fate worse than death, as we know that Grindelwald was imprisoned in Ermengarde after his capture. They say he showed remorse in later years, alone in his cell at Ermengarde. I hope that that is true. I would like to think he did feel the horror and shame of what he had done. The third and most life-threatening unforgivable curse is of course the killing curse, Avada Kedavra. Avada Kedavra's purpose is simple. It causes the victim to instantly die. If you want to kill your victim, then this is the spell to use. Given the nature of the First Wizarding War and how high the stakes were, I think that it's highly likely that Dumbledore used the killing curse on 1 or 2 occasions. Had dark forces overcome the Ministry and the Order, then there would have been no additional line of defense to protect the magical world. By not killing, Aurors in the Order would have been taking an unnecessary and lethal risk. Capturing is the way to deal with Death Eaters under ideal circumstances, but in times of crisis, it may just be best practice to deal with them more permanently, even if that means sinking to their level. Dumbledore is a logical man, and though he would have avoided it wherever possible, I'm sure that he used the killing curse when absolutely necessary to preserve the sanctity of the magical world. There are even a few passages from the text that support the notion that the good guys were aware of the necessity to kill on occasion. First, from the Deathly Hallows. "I shall expect you and the Slytherins in the Great Hall in 20 minutes. Also," said Professor McGonagall, "if you wish to leave with your students, we shall not stop you. But if any of you attempt to sabotage our resistance or take up arms against us within the castle, then, Horace, we duel to kill." And next, from the Goblet of Fire. Crouch's principles might have been good in the beginning. I wouldn't know. He rose quickly through the Ministry, and he started ordering very harsh measures against Voldemort's supporters. The Aurors were given new powers to kill rather than capture, for instance. And I wasn't the only one who was handed straight to the Dementors without trial. Crouch fought violence with violence, and authorized the use of the Unforgivable Curses against suspects. And another from the Deathly Hallows. "Harry, the time for disarming is past. These people are trying to capture and kill you. At least stun if you aren't prepared to kill." So, as we can see, sometimes killing is necessary, even if you are one of the good guys. Dumbledore was a cool, calculated, and practical man, and I have no doubt in my mind that he would have used Avada Kedavra on the odd occasion if it served the greater good. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Before we wrap things up, I just wanted to mention that we've launched a join button on the channel with 4 different membership types. Joining is just another way of supporting the channel. and it allows us to continue putting out consistent content for you guys every day. Each of the membership types have various perks, so if you haven't had a chance to go and check them out, then do so by hitting join and taking a look. There's absolutely no obligation to join, but if you want to support the channel further, then this is a good way of doing it.